Good evening. The October 12th, 2023 meeting of the Corvallis School Board is called to order at 6:33 p.m. In the interest of public health and safety for all community members, especially for immunocompromised individuals and their families, the Corvallis School Board will continue to offer a virtual option for board member and district personnel participation. Additionally, public comment is available at some meetings, both in person and virtually. Information about how to provide public comment is available on the Corvallis School District website. The board agenda and packet, as well as the link to the district YouTube channel, are available on the school board page on the district website. Public meetings are live streamed on the district's YouTube channel, and a recording is posted to the same channel, typically the day after the meeting. Tonight we have Sarah, Chris, Therese, Shauna, and myself in attendance in person. Judah is attending virtually, and Sammy will be just a little bit late. And the first order of business is acknowledgement of LGBTQI2S+ History Month.
Acknowledgement of LGBTQI2S+ History Month, Resolution Number 211001. Whereas the Corvallis School District recognizes and pays tribute to the significant contributions made in our community by lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, and two-spirit people, as well as people from the multitude of other gender and sexual identities, LGBTQI2S+, and whereas the Corvallis School District affirms that LGBTQI2S+ students, family, staff, and community members should be valued for all aspects of their identities, and whereas LGBTQI2S+ History Month grew out of the establishment of what was then called Gay and Lesbian History by Missouri high school history teacher Rodney Wilson in 1994, and
whereas National Coming Out Day occurs each October 11th, and whereas LGBTQI2S+ History Month was first celebrated in school districts within the United States in 2012, and whereas LGBTQI2S+ History Month has yet to be proclaimed nationally, and whereas LGBTQI2S+ history is not part of standard education curricula, and
whereas LGBTQI2S+ History Month provides an opportunity to continue the district's growth in learning about the many contributions of LGBTQI2S+ people to the nation, world, and local community, and whereas the state of Oregon has documented history of anti-LGBTQI2S+ actions, and whereas education is a necessary component for creating a more equitable and anti-racist community, nation, and world, and
whereas the Corvallis School District has made a commitment to equity and anti-racism, and whereas the Corvallis School District has a responsibility to honor and respect the diverse histories of our community, and whereas the Corvallis School District believes each and every student must be celebrated and appreciated for the distinct and vibrant contributions made by sharing cultures, languages, ideas, beliefs, and values within a school community.
Therefore, let it be resolved that the Board of Education of the Corvallis School District does hereby proclaim October 2021, when the school proclamation was first written, as well as each October annually, as LGBTQI2S+ History Month in the district, and strongly encourages students, families, staff, and community members to join in existing local celebrations, and encourages all schools in the district to help highlight this month in great appropriate ways, as well as highlight the contributions of LGBTQI2S+ peoples to the local community, nation, and beyond, both historically and in current times. This proclamation was adopted by the Board of Directors and School District 509J in Corvallis of Benton and Lynn Counties, Oregon, at its regular meeting this 14th day of October 2021. And forward.
Thanks, everyone. The next order of business is board member reports. Does anybody have a report?
So Chris and Lou and Sammy and I and Ryan and Melissa all attended the OSBA Roadshow last night and talked about possible upcoming legislation and how that would impact school boards in the Lynn, Benton, Lincoln school districts, and talked about some of the bills that were passed this last term, including 819 and the impacts those are having on schools. And so it was an interesting night to talk about, positive changes and things that need some work still, and to hear from other school boards that are local about how they're feeling about things too. So it was good.
And I was going to see if we wanted to debrief during the OSBA time, if you all want, or you can share your debrief during board member reports too.
I'll wait on last night's, but can I shares? I got the privilege of attending lunch with Mr. Noss at Letitia Carson for National School Lunch Day. And it was very fun to sit with some students and talk about their favorite lunches and their experiences there at Letitia Carson, and it was just very fun. Pizza is the most positive lunch. I think Ryan experienced that too. And then, is this appropriate time to comment on crisis? Yeah. So I am on the county crisis team and am called whenever there's a major traumatic event or a crisis situation in the county. And so I was called, unfortunately, last week to support the school district with the death of, at first we knew it was a parent of a Crescent Valley student, but also realized it was a staff member from the district office that supports students in many ways with mental wellness. And I just want to commend Ryan, your team, Student Services, because it was a tragic loss, and that team had to respond immediately to support staff at Crescent Valley, to support staff throughout the district, district office, the mental health team, students. So it was a very big response, and the team was amazing and experiencing the loss of one of their coworkers. And so I just really want to acknowledge the kind of response that this team can do and the work that they do, and at any given moment, they can do amazing support and work for our district, even when they're feeling it. And I know some of them are here, but it was just amazing to see and very difficult. And I just really want to commend them. And you, Ryan, for heading that as well. And Sabrina, especially for leading that team.
Thank you, Chris, for sharing that and for your work too with everyone. Is there any other reports? I went to the Delta meeting. Was that last week? That was last week. And also, yeah, it was last week. And then, as already mentioned, the OSBA regional meeting / roadshow last night with folk. And Chris was at the Delta meeting. I think are you the board member? Yeah, okay. Did you want to share anything about Delta? You go ahead. It was a great evening, and we got to hear a lot about the mental health services provided to students and some of the way that equity is centered there, and being community with everybody, learned a lot about each other, and it was really great. And yeah, so you want to share anything else about it?
Just what a powerful group of people and really passionate about the work. So I'm very honored to be a part of that team.
Thank you. And then since Sammy isn't going to be able to be with us for the beginning part, we're able to use this allocated time for the OSBA and National School Board Association updates to debrief the roadshow regional meeting. So if folk wanted to share any thoughts or what you got from your time there, that'd be great. Were you there, Shauna? What was that?
I've already talked a little bit about it, but.
Okay, well, if you don't have anything else to share, it's okay. I had some thoughts too, but I'm waiting for everybody. It was really nice to hear what's going on in other districts and how they're responding to some of the changes that may come, or like how we can advocate together. I appreciated hearing from other districts in the region, because it's one thing, as a lot of people know, I serve on the Caucus of Color for OSBA, so I hear a lot of statewide things going on, and so it was kind of nice to hear just that representation from the region that we're in, and so I appreciated that, and also the attention and time given to provide feedback on the idea of state salary kind of work going on, and offer feedback on that. Anybody else? Okay, cool. We don't have to stay on that one super long. We have, next week up on the agenda is the superintendent's report, so I'm gonna hand it over to Ryan.
There's just a couple things I wanted to highlight. The first one is, again, sort of appreciation for the school board. So this is, for some of you, this is our third night in a row together, because on Tuesday night we did the College Hill tour, 100 years of that building, and Eileen, one of our student representatives, was one of the tour guides for that group. It was mostly neighbors who came to see the space because it's now open, and to be able to point out classrooms that used to be XYZ and are now our construction program or our urban farm or classroom, our science classroom, now really looks like a science classroom with all of the aspects of what it means to be a scientist and do experiments in labs in high school. So everybody had a chance to do that and visit that night, so thank you for being there. And then last night was the road show, and then tonight is a board meeting. So I know that you're all volunteers, and you volunteer an incredible amount of time and energy to this work, so I just wanted to first thank you for doing that. It's not every week that there's 3 nights in a row, but there are lots of weeks where there's at least 2 nights. That was this case last week, and so again, thanks for all the dedication. A couple things I wanted to highlight. Also, again, Chris and I went for lunch at Letitia Carson for National School Lunch Week, so thanks for joining me for that. In the future, if there's a date or that's not National School Lunch Week, but you'd still like to go and join me for lunch at a school, just let Kim know, because it was a lot of fun, and I'd be happy to take you out to visit schools, and that was a fun way to do that. Make sure to, yeah, pizza day. I still like the turkey and the mashed potatoes. That's still my favorite day. But the turkey day or the pizza day was good too. A couple of other things to highlight were we're going to have our joint meeting with the Corvallis Public Schools Foundation next Thursday night. We've met to plan the agenda for that, and really the focus of that agenda is the foundation will be sharing updates around where they are with their board goals and where they're hoping to go this year. And we have had an opportunity tonight to talk about our draft goals, and so it will be an opportunity once again to talk about where there's connection between the two organizations in terms of the support the foundation provides and how those funds go towards the things we're working on. So again, it has a lot of similarities to what we did last spring, other than now we have something really tangible to talk more about. So that's the plan for next Thursday night, so be prepared for that. Just two other quick highlights. One is that the child nutrition program community eligibility provisions were just updated, and in that process, what is happening is they are lowering the requirements for schools to have that kind of free and reduced lunch program going. So some of our schools later this year will be able to have lunch and breakfast available for all students at no cost. And based on those thresholds, the schools, currently Garfield and Letitia Carson qualify, but based on the changes in those requirements, we're going to also have Catherine Jones Harrison, Lincoln, Mountain View, and Linus Pauling will all qualify as well. So in those 6 schools now, breakfast and lunch will be served to all students, and there won't be any requirements around eligibility. So again, it's a great expansion to continue to feed kids. So just wanted you to know about that, and it was fitting that it happened to be National School Lunch Week that I was able to share that with you. And then the final thing is the 21st Century Learning Grant, and we talked about that at the retreat, or the day before we had received notification. Just wanted to let you know that at this point, we have hired Emily Peterson as the coordinator for that position, or for that program, and our goal is to have at each of our title schools that program up and running in early November. So again, remember it's a 5-year program, $500,000 per year to support those our Title I schools with extended learning opportunities. So that's will be for after school time as well as summer learning. So again, just wanted you to have that update and to know where we are in the process. So again, those are just some of the highlights of the things that are going on in the district that I thought were important to share with you.
Thanks, Ryan. Any questions? I just wanted to apologize for failing to mention that I was on the College Hill tour. That was really great, and it was really beautiful to see. Thank you for being a tour guide and showing people around. I know the other group, it's amazing to see the changes that have happened in that school. And I know that my kids that went to College Hill were really excited for you all with the new bathrooms in particular, instead of those little low ones. Yes, among other things, but that was one of the things that did stand out. But that's really great, Ryan, to hear about the kids getting more food in this, with the program being expanded. It takes away a lot of stigmatism too, that people may feel like they shouldn't apply for free and reduced lunch, and I really think that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay, so we're done with that part, and sorry y'all, we're a little bit ahead, which is always nice, to allow more room for the next portion, which is our public comment period. So I wanted to first thank a bunch of folk for being here this evening, especially those who are signed up. If you didn't sign up already, the orange cards are in the back if you're planning on providing comment. And we will now open the public comment period. We value the lived experiences of students, families, staff, and community, and welcome public comment as a necessary and important part of the work of the district and board. I'm going to read the guidelines for everyone at this time. The complete guidelines for public comment are available on the registration table at the back of the gym and on the board's website, so they're on the back table. And I'm going to share a few important points now from there. When it is your turn to speak, please come forward, have a seat, state your name, and direct your comments to the board. Speakers may offer objective criticism of district operations and programs, but the board will not hear complaints concerning individual district personnel. As a reminder, you will have 3 minutes to make your comments. I will alert you when you have 30 seconds left. That's really hard, so I'm going to be like 30 seconds and try not to interrupt you all. There's also the light on the table that you can see when your time's up. Following your comments, the board will have 3 minutes to ask clarifying questions, but are not able to engage in conversation. If board members would like to revisit a topic or issue brought up during public comment, they may do so at the appropriate time in the agenda. Before you start your comments, please state your name for the record and state whether you reside within the school district boundary. So don't forget that part when you all introduce yourselves. And I just wanted to clarify something really quick for you all, that it's hard not to engage in conversation because we really want to talk with people, but the way that this works is we are only able to ask clarifying questions at this point, and so we are not trying to dismiss anybody's comments by not engaging in conversation. And the reminder about individual district personnel, we can't hear complaints because that will prevent us from being able to hear them should there be a formal complaint process. So, who do we got first, Kim?
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to provide public comment. My name is Elliot Paulson. I live here in Corvallis, Oregon, and I am an educational assistant here at Lincoln Elementary. The purpose of my comment tonight is not to be accusatory, nor is it to rant angrily, but rather to elucidate upon the frustrations that are being felt by many of the educational assistants and classified staff within the district. As educational assistants, in a time when behaviors remain at a high post-COVID pandemic, the onus of navigating these student behavioral needs frequently falls upon the shoulders of our classified staff. Classified staff are asked to do a very broadly defined range of activities for our positions. These can range from changing students' diapers to navigating students who are having difficulty returning to class. To the students, we are often friends, teachers, confidants, even parents. When I have spoken to many of my colleagues about the frustrations they're facing, it isn't the students' behaviors in navigating those, children kicking us, shouting profanity at us, that often comes up. It's a feeling of intangible disrespect, a feeling that we are disconnected and often considered as an afterthought, that our positions are merely numbers being filled on sheets. A recent example of some feelings of frustration was October 9th. Many of us were not made aware that this would be an in-service day. There may be some clarification on that later. But I would like to close with some questions for rumination. These are obviously not things I'm expecting you to answer tonight. They're just things I want you to have on your radars, and an open invitation. The question is, as educators and as parents, who do you want to be working with your children? Oh, I guess that's my time. If I may, the invitation would be to come to any of our schools, shadow any of our classified staff, and experience what we experience in a day.
Thank you. Is there any questions? Did you have other questions that you wanted us to think about?
It's on.
I primarily want you to consider in any future endeavors how you want to treat our educational assistants and what transparency means to you. a key element that I wasn't able to get to within my 3 minutes because this is a broad concept and I really just want to be starting a conversation. And that's what I want this to be, again, a conversation, providing perspective, is that many educational assistants, because of how broad our position is and how just broadly defined the scope of our role can be, is how do you plan to make it clear and make it equitable for our educational assistants? Oftentimes, people are hired for these classified positions, and you don't know if you're going to be supporting a classroom, supporting students in a one-to-one environment, supporting high-needs students, supporting students behaviorally, or if your role will shift. I've had colleagues who came in as an educational assistant and were suddenly asked to do diabetic delegation, a role that they were not comfortable with. I've had colleagues come in to specifically work in a school so they could be closer to their child and be told that they were going to be moved to a different school immediately upon being hired. These are positions that are very unfortunate for the individuals who are being thrust upon them.
Thank you. Okay. All right, thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you.
Are you checking, Kim, if Judah raises his hand, or is somebody checking? Because he's online? Okay, thanks, in case there's questions coming from him. Okay.
Hi, my name is Scott Fairbanks, and I do live in the district boundaries. Last spring, I talked to a friend who is a parent that volunteers at Franklin School. They were alarmed when a large number of books in the school library were removed from circulation without thoughtful consideration from the current and past librarians, parents, and teachers. A school library is the reservoir of commendable titles accumulated over many years by the community to offer to our children to shape them, to expand their minds, to learn about the past, the present, and the future, and to allow them to see the world through another lens. One of my great joys in parenting has been to recommend to my children a book that I read when I was their age, then to talk about the book, compare how it affects them to how it affected me, and this can only be done if we value the perspectives of those who came before us, and those perspectives persist in our books, in the books we keep. There were 23,436 books weeded from the CVS libraries last year, and 2,344 were added. So that's 10 removed for each one added. I sent many emails and paid $102 to get the added, weeded, and current inventory list of books in the district and did a crude audit. I have limited my survey of library inventory added and weeded to the Franklin School only for the last year. And I'm happy to provide the information I gathered to concerned parents at other schools if they want to make a similar audit. So before last year, there were 9,682 books in the Franklin Library. Last year, 67%, or 6,738 of those books were removed. 675 books were added, which represents 18%, or about 1 in 5, of the new total of 3,619 books. The published criteria for weeding books is reasonable: books that are in poor condition or books that aren't getting much interest. This criteria cannot explain why 2/3 of the library was weeded. A very scant survey of the 7,000 weeded books that were not replaced, the 700 weeded books that were not replaced includes To Kill a Mockingbird, Red Badge of Courage, The Adventures of Huck Finn, The Call of the Wild, Fahrenheit 451, A Wrinkle in Time, Ender's Game, Animal Farm, all the Little House on the Prairie books, all S.E. Hinton books, all Judy Blume books, many of the Dr. Seuss titles, all Curious George titles, and this is from a short, cursory survey of less than a fourth of the list. There were 16 biographical books of 11 different women added, but only 5 biographies of men were added. Books about Sonia Sotomayor and Ruth Bader Ginsburg were added. All books about Sandra Day O'Connor, the first woman justice, were removed. Literally hundreds of books about presidents, explorers, scientists, and sports heroes were removed. These many male role models were replaced by only 5 titles of Martin Luther King, Gandhi, Elton John, Gilbert Baker, who I didn't know, he's the sewer of the first gay pride flag, and Muhammad Ali.
We're at the time, sorry.
All done?
Yeah, the little red light right there is the,
Can I just finish my last paragraph?
let's see if we have questions first, okay? Do you all have any questions? Do you have a question? I was gonna say, can you continue your,
Yeah, okay. So many of the titles added represent an easily identified worldview, mean white supremacy, stamped racism, anti-racism, and ironically, our diversity makes us stronger. It is clear that the Franklin Library is no longer a community reservoir of commendable titles, rather it is quickly becoming a place where one ideological camp forces its material on a young, impressionable, captive audience. Censorship is not an adequate description, since the end isn't to silence viewpoint, but rather a severely limited range of material one might view. My suggestions are the community recover these books that were weeded, and we evaluate the merit of these books to be evaluated transparently. The list of library acquisitions and removals be published in a universally accessible online location. The person weeding or purchasing a book comment in the field in the database. And I'd also like to be reimbursed for $102 I was required to pay because these lists need to be universally accessible. It is unacceptable to charge someone $102 who is a parent and taxpayer to learn what books are being provided to our children to read. Yep. Okay, thank you.
thank you for joining us, and thank you.
My name is Leonie Bannister. I do live within the Corvallis School District. Thank you, board members, for your service to our schools and our students. Good evening. My name is Leonie Bannister, and I'm a school counselor at Catherine Jones Harrison. I would like to start with my favorite quote from Catherine Jones Harrison. It is a prayer that she said every day. She held it deeply within her heart, and it's evidenced in the legacy that she left. Help me do and say what will help my people today. In recent weeks and days, our school has navigated transition and unexpected turns. When there is a disruption to a system, oftentimes a story is told to explain the disruption. That story can be true from one perspective, and there is usually another perspective or story to be told. Like we tell our students, seek multiple perspectives. I would like to share my perspective of Dr. Sarah Johnson with you, the board. When the school-based team met in August to start planning for the school year, Dr. Johnson asked us to share 2 words that describe us. She went first. Her words were that she was intense and relational. I thought to myself, wow, what a combo. What has unfolded in her time at KJH is that she's intensely committed to building systems that work for students and is deeply connected to those students. She ensured that every student in our school gets what they need to learn. One of the simplest yet profound lessons I have learned from Dr. Johnson is that there is no task beneath her. She supervises in the lunchroom, responds to behavior issues, interacts with students almost all day, and many other small things. She will do the same work that other people are assigned to do. These are remarkable traits for a building administrator. One example of her humility is from the first day of school. We were preparing logistics for students when a classroom teacher walked in, slightly frazzled, that their trash had not been emptied overnight. There was no admiration of the problem. Dr. Johnson immediately raised her hand and said, "I'll empty it." We stood there kind of in shock to see our building administrator self-select to empty trash. We were scratching the surface of Dr. Johnson's humble and deep commitment to service of students and staff. I have watched Dr. Johnson question systems and decisions that are made in our building. She questions to ensure that we are practicing evidence-based decision-making and that we understand why we are doing things. She especially centers historically oppressed by poverty, language, and racism within the traditional school system. This is where her intensity shows up. And to be honest with you, it took me a minute to get used to. I have learned so much from her clarity and her conciseness. Her direct and clear language, coupled with her transformational leadership, made our systems more efficient and student-centered.
We're going to have to pause for a second, because your time ran
Yeah,
out.
I see that.
Sorry.
I have one more paragraph.
One more paragraph, too. Does anybody have any questions so far?
Thank you for letting me finish.
Do you-
Yeah, I was just going to
You're
ask
gonna
her if
ask
she
her?
had another paragraph.
I do.
Okay.
I'd like
Can
to
you-
finish. Thank you so much. Dr. Johnson's communication style is direct, yet she has a relational and charitable way of being. In my opinion, she truly knows the art of leadership. She prioritizes the needs of a few while meeting the needs of all students. I've been trying to do this for 20 years, and I can tell you it's no easy task. Dr. Johnson does it with skill. I return to Catherine Jones Harrison's prayer. Catherine Jones Harrison had a deep-seated connection to her people and her community, and I am here tonight to share my truth and my experience, because I know that it aligns with many staff and students at our school. I am doing and saying what will help my people today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Are there any clarifying questions?
We have just, I think we have like a minute left to questions if anybody had any more questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks a lot.
Hi. Thanks for the opportunity to present. I'm John Swanson, and I have a granddaughter attending Franklin Elementary. As a retired educator, I'm passionate about enhancing our children's education. As some of you may know, I have been a citizen activist for incorporating sustainability into our school district for over a decade, including back in 2011 when it was first included in district policy. More recently, I attended the community input regarding the board goals. And I had other people with me who were concerned about including sustainability in the board goals. There are a lot of people who didn't attend, but we know that in this community, if you know about the Corvallis Sustainability Coalition that has over several hundred members, that this community is devoted to the climate issues and sustainability. So I was really disappointed when I found out just this week that sustainability is not mentioned anywhere in the current draft of the board goals. I'd like people here to please raise their hand if you agree with preparing our children to make educated and constructive responses to our global climate crisis should be a goal for our school district. Now I need to find my place. If we agree that the climate crisis and sustainability is important, shouldn't it be included under Goal 3, relevant and engaging learning? Actually, this could be remedied by just adding 2 words in Goal 3, Strategy 1, so that it reads, quote, support multiliteracy and eco-literacy in our students and staff. I would like to point out that success in the area of multiliteracy is inextricably linked to success in advancing eco-literacy. Adding eco-literacy broadens the human-centered framework of multiliteracy to include our planet's biological communities upon which all diverse human communities depend. Multiliteracy addresses global challenges of cultural diversity, while eco-literacy addresses global challenges of biodiversity. Now you are all...
We're gonna have to pause again because the time went off.
You gotta be kidding. I timed this and I'm, whoa.
Yeah,
Okay.
it goes by fast. I know, I'm
Sure
sorry.
did.
Does anybody have questions? Can you finish your statement in the question time?
Yeah, I've got quite a bit, but in essence, I think that if you look at the meaning of multiliteracy and ecoliteracy, you can see that they're connected like a pair of Siamese twins. That if you're going to make progress in multiliteracy, you have to make progress in ecoliteracy. And you can see that there are so many, you're to be commended for all of your work for diversity. But the diverse populations, the people of color, the people who are in poverty, and women are adversely affected by the climate crisis. And so you can see that the cultural context in which this takes place interfaces clearly. So I guess my point is that this might be a nice place to do it because those two fit together really nicely. And so I would encourage you, whether you have this particular way of doing it or another way, that I'd like you to stand up and show that this district and you as a board support including sustainability in its goals. We're talking about relevancy and education, and I can't think of anything more relevant that would support the future of our children and actually the future of civilization.
We have about a minute left in the question time, if there's other questions. Huh?
Sean, are you going to leave your notes?
You already
I
did.
turn, yeah.
Oh, Judah has a question. Go ahead, Judah, we got like 1 minute left for question time.
Do you have examples of things you'd like to see changed in the district to improve eco-literacy?
The district has done a lot of good things, including the support of green schools and those kinds of things. And there's a lot with facilities and things. So over the years, it's been a long haul, but I really feel like the district has shown a lot of commitment. And they recently, during these financially crunched times, managed to replace what was a full-time position, but with a half-time position. But I thought that showed great commitment. What I'm interested in eco-literacy is to bring this to an institutional central place in the district, and that requires eco-literacy by moving it from extracurricular green school activities and putting it in the curriculum. And I think that with the support of the board and the people that are working here, I think we can really move. And I was seeing some movement in the direction of supporting, including these kinds of things into the curriculum so that our students can not just maybe happen to join a club or whatever to be exposed to this. So I think that would be, my ideal would be to start infusing these kinds of educational things so that our students really do get prepared because they understand the global systems theories and they understand how all of this comes together.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for asking that question too, Judah. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sean.
Please excuse my phone. It's by talking points. I'm not checking it. My name is Dana Zachary. I live in the district. I was Corvallis's district librarian from 2017 to 2022. And I worked in the district for Sheldon 2015 to 2017. And to the surprise of no one in this room who knows me, I'm going to talk about school libraries tonight. I love the Corvallis school libraries. So I will run over, I will stop me and tell me enough. So I've been a librarian forever, pretty much, a public and a school librarian, since 2001. And weeding, we've heard about weeding tonight, so I wanted to give whatever perspective and context to weeding that I could give. When I started in the district, our libraries had a problem with our collections. the average copyright age was 31 to 27 years old, which meant that the elementary school books on the shelves were older than the parents of the children who were borrowing them, because that's the average. So many more were older. We had books about lasers from 1996. We had country books from 1982. It just wasn't okay. And so that was a huge priority of mine when I hit the district level job. And I worked very hard on the weeding criteria and the weeding guidelines, and I did a lot of training with our building staff. And we've heard tonight from a speaker that our weeding guidelines seem reasonable, and I'm glad that's how they hit, because they matter to me, and they matter to us all, because really good people in your employ are trying to do the best they can. Because, and I will talk a little bit about, I don't want to single one school out, but the figures you heard tonight didn't jive. Now, I was not your district librarian last year, so I don't have last year's figures, access to them, because they're in our library system, our electronic library system. But I do know that Franklin Library, when I left in June 2022, had 18,000 plus volumes on its shelves. That's the figure I eyeballed. So I'm not sure where the discrepancy happened between the figure you heard and the figure I know about. I'm just throwing it out there. But the bottom line in the context is that our weeding, which is a fundamental thing you do in any kind of library, was extreme. I am not going to sit here and say anything else. We had those incredibly old copyright dates. We had packed shelves that you couldn't even pull books. Books were stacked on top as well of other books. It just, okay. And circulation statistics were showing that the vast amount of books were just not being touched by students. And these are the criteria that you start with, and then you go to inclusion. We care so much about offering a diverse set of perspectives, and our guidelines are crafted to prioritize making that true in our collections. Windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors. Am I over already? Gosh. Yeah. Okay, sorry. Okay.
I know it goes by fast.
It
really
sure does, and I talk really fast, and it's never enough.
Does anybody have any questions? Go ahead, Sam. Do you have questions? Oh. Do you have any?
Oh, good, I get one more paragraph.
Huh?
Okay, so anyway, no question?
Well, Sammy's mic didn't pick up very well, but.
Could you?
Whoa. now we really hear you.
Guys, I'm loud enough. Could you conclude your remarks?
Thank you, Sammy. Yes, because there's just the last thing I need to say is that everybody sitting in this room, I am 100% confident, and I am never 100% confident, but on this I am. Every single body in this room would tell you that all they want is for students to love to read, to bring joy to reading, to use reading to help them critically think, to expand their worldview. Every single body in this room. And that, weeding is a part of that. Nobody likes it, but it really is a part of that. But it's a gift in Corvallis that both your staff and your student and your parents and everybody, actually, the whole community cares about that. And that really was the goal. We want kids to look at their library and love it and feel tempted like candy. Mem Fox, the author, I will conclude. Mem Fox, the author, said when she wants to hear people use the word reading, she wants to hear the word chocolate. And that is what we do in our libraries. Thanks so much.
Thank you for your time. Is there any other cards out there? Okay, we just wanted to double check one more time. Hearing no more comments, the public hearing is now closed. Sorry, I lost my page. And again, thank you all for making time to come this evening to either speak, support each other, or just hear what was going on through the public comment. And you all are welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, of course, if you really would like to. Because we're going to move on to board goals, first read. And Ryan, you're up for this one.
Yeah. So since we met last in retreat to work on the board goals, I've had the opportunity to work with the cabinet team to take what information came from the title, as well as the description and a couple of strategies, or the strategies that we wanted to bring forward. So my goal for tonight was to have you see this as a complete document, and in that to be able to identify if there are things that are missing that need to be added. If you're feeling pretty good about it, then it allows us to have the sense about if it's ready to come back for a second read. Again, thinking about where we've come from with this. So we started last winter meeting with community groups, identifying specific community groups that we wanted to make sure we had the opportunity to hear from directly. So we had those sessions. We also had open sessions where community members could just come to those open sessions and provide input. From that, we had a report last spring that allowed us to then come into a retreat that included board members and some of our other staff members, community members. About 50 folks came together to spend the day working through the details of the language. And so that's where we are tonight. I would say that what I appreciate about where we are right now is the amount of intention and time that people have taken to get us to this point. And I also recognize, having worked with you all for a while now, that there'll be things that you will want to address or modify or change. And we are still in a position to take those under consideration without question. So I hope that in this discussion tonight, if there's things that, again, you feel are missing, need to be enhanced, need to be struck, this is the opportunity and the time for that to happen. So I'm going to turn it over to you all to provide me with that kind of feedback. What my intention is to take that feedback tonight, take a list of it. Kim and I will do that. And then from that, we will come back to you with a revision. So unless somebody says right now, which I know is not going to happen, that it's great as it is, because that's not going to happen. I'm open to your feedback and considerations, and then we will bring it back to you once again. These are your goals. Keep that in mind. We use these goals as a way to identify what we're going to budget. We use it as a way to identify my success in my role. We use them as a way to help our district to move forward. Under strategies are going to be activities, but those activities are really on our side of the responsibilities, on the management side, on the operational side. So know that if you're feeling like it's not discrete and specific enough, there is another layer below that. That is the work that will be undertaken within the district over the next 5 years. So if that's a question or a concern or a spot that gives you pause, just know that there are other operational components underneath each one of these, underneath each strategy that help us to accomplish those things. So if you feel good about the titles, if you feel good about the description, and if you feel good about the strategies, then just know that that's kind of where the board's role ends and where our role begins. With that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Ryan. I see Sammy ready to, and Sarah. Should we just go? Yeah, why don't we, yeah, that's a great idea.
Ideally, that's what I would like to.
Sarah suggested for folk online that we start with goal 1. Judah, don't forget to let us know if you have something to say as well. So let's start with.
Can I suggest also before goal 1 overarching comments on the structure, either before or after?
Sure, let's do that before.
Before?
The overarching structure comments. Go ahead, Sammy.
So I want to acknowledge, first of all, the structure of the document, which is we have a goal statement, under strategies that we are prioritizing to achieve the goal. And under it, the superintendent and his team work on activities to achieve those strategies to accomplish the goals. I'll add, Ryan, as well, during your evaluation, during the school improvement plans, and all layers in between budgeting, we also have measures and benchmarks that gives us indicators of success toward those goals. So that's the overarching structure. And I want to acknowledge that here we're only elevating the goal statements and the strategies. I want to give myself a pause here and give us a pause on the original, the first 5 years goals were a little bit more specific, and the goals here are more of a vision statement. They are very focused, but they might be a commitment statement that gives me a little bit of a pause. Do we need to add another layer of specific goals under that vision statement, or elevate the measures that we need to assess? So in 5 years, when we read this vision statement, I hope the 7 board members at the time, and the superintendent and the team all will agree we're doing well there. You can do that also with the vision statement, but I'm really struggling overall with the whole structure, if we should add measures or if we should have a way to have both the vision and the goals. So that's my overarching comments I want to add.
Can I respond to that? Do you mind? I hear that in terms of what are those key progress indicators. We talked about that a little bit when we were in the retreat around some of the requirements from the Department of Ed around some key progress indicators that they approve based on where we are currently. And then we also have other measures that we look at, qualitative and perception measures like youth truth. And so those pieces, I think, I still envision those being built out in a more robust manner. At the same time, I would like to get to the point where we have a pretty solid, we're in a pretty solid space with this document, and then to spend the time with my team working through that. I feel like we've done some of it already and identified some areas, and I also didn't want to do two things. One, overcomplicate this document, and two, go too far into that space until we had something a little bit firmer. So know that the two pieces are key progress indicators as well as activities.
I think that's all fine if those key indicators and how we're measuring academic progress, how we're measuring what it means to graduate from a Corvallis High School, what we're expecting our students to accomplish, is communicated really well to the community. And I'm going to jump ahead and say I think we should have a goal 5 that's about communication and engagement. But right now, some of these goals, I mean, like in goal 1, strategy 2, if you're a community member and you look at that, it may mean nothing to you. And you're going to look and say, well, this just looks like a word salad, and I want to know what the expectations for our kids is. And so I think it's fine to have those, like the sort of how we're going to carry out that strategy as sub pieces underneath.
Yeah.
But I think it needs to be part of how it's communicated and presented, and how we communicate about where we're going to meet those goals. Because a lot of what we heard from the community was we want to know how we're doing. We want to know, we want some aspirational places that we want our students to go. We have sort of the benchmarks we expect them to meet, but then we want to go farther than that. And right now, because these don't sort of have what feels like the meat of how we're going to get there, if I were a community member looking at this, I'd be like, they're not committing to anything.
And so last time we went through this process, one of the things that happened is we had a provisional adoption of them because there was questions about did we have enough community input. And then we looked at the city's 2040 vision and did a crosswalk to show all that community input really aligned with what we were seeing in that document. So that's why there was a provisional approval at that point. What I'm wondering about is kind of thinking of the same concept, and we're not asking for action tonight, but just kind of knowing that there is that sort of midpoint as well. And at the same time, I hear what you're saying. And to be honest, it's going to be a little bit harder for me related to what assessment measures we do have, because what you've done is more sort of an inspirational vision setting goals set than we had last time. And so I think that's true, that there's going to need to be some specificity, and it's also a little harder to line up that specificity based on the way these have been developed, which is fine, but there is that piece.
I think what may help is, I know, last time we had, my continual comment is always like, are we actually developing goals, or are we developing like guiding principles for the district? And that's my continual comment, because the goals are the 3 to 2 words that are on there are sometimes like the goal 1, the goal is actually excellent learning experience. That's the actual goal, right? And then underneath that is a narrative. So I don't know if there just needs to be clarification that that's not the actual goal, that's like that's the vision of what that goal means. And so I think like some clarity around that might just help. And it may also help that it doesn't necessarily have to be on the board goals, but to have somewhere linked to this on wherever it's published on the webpage, on our on the information page, that it has the state like measures on there, that way community, it's clear that we are measured by the state, like with graduation rates and like literacy rates and all those things that are part of how we're measured as a district by ODE, because those already exist. So I don't really think we need to replicate that like we did with, I think, goal 1 last time, where it's like, it was just basically like repeating what we're it's like, okay, cool, we're already expected to do that. Yeah. We're supposed to graduate students. Students are supposed to know math and know how to read. Like that is the basic tenets of public education, is students learning and graduating. And so it didn't feel like it was specific to Corvallis School District, because that's the whole purpose of K-12. And so that's where I think that it may be helpful just to have that kind of specified somewhere. And I know we also talked about the equity statement being like an overarching piece too, the old one, where it had, and I really appreciate how like number 2, I know we're going to go through these, but I remember we had talked about that being like a guiding, how it was like this guiding piece to each of the goals instead of putting it in every single goal. In other words, I think we need a narrative at the top that says like there's ODE standards that we're measured on, that's the growth of the students, the education of the students, and there's also these parts that we want to guide all of our goals, goal 1, and then like whatever the descriptor word is you want to use for that couple sentences, and then you'll have the strategies. That may help a little bit, as well as having like a little footnote, I guess is what I would call it, just because I work in academia, it doesn't. But for things like what Sarah's saying, I mean, my screen timed out, what is it called? Goal 1, the 5 dimensions of teaching and learning framework, like a little note that says where it goes, like a link down for the definitions, because I think the transparency for community is really important, and like getting stuck in the language sometimes because we know what it is, doesn't mean everybody does, and so that helps make it a little more clear. So these are overarching comments, I think. This list, okay. Do we have other overarching comments? Because we have like, we're already on our last minute allocated for this.
It wasn't going to take 15 minutes. I don't know.
Who allocated that? Yeah. Who was that? I think that was.
It wasn't me.
It was probably us. It was us.
It was me.
It was Ryan.
Approved.
I would have blocked off the night.
It's first read.
All right.
Okay. So let's see. Who you had something else, Sarah?
Well, I mean, it sort of runs into goal 2. And one of the things I've heard about, like we have these things that are measured by ODE, but I've heard some concern because the requirements to graduate from high school feel less clear to people right now, that including information about, like, not just like these are what we measure for ODE for like third grade reading and algebra and that, but that there's some indication somewhere, whether it's, I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to be in the strategies, but in this information that Lou's talking about, we provide some information about what we expect a Corvallis High School graduate to be able to do, and how that's measured.
So I've seen that two different ways. One is I've seen something like a portrait of a graduate, which is kind of a more complex process. And I've also seen OUS standards, admission requirements, footnoted as well as as people talk about that component. So either one is possible. One is pretty simplistic, and one is more complicated, and will take more time on this from all of you basically to pull that off.
It seems like using did you say the Oregon universities?
Standards.
Yeah, those standards seems like perhaps not the way to go, because it's really talking about a very specific profile of where students will be going, and not everybody is planning on going to college, or at least to a four-year public. So, yeah. I keep adding the descriptors. Okay, is there any other overarching comments? We can probably add a little bit more time on for this, but I don't want to.
Yeah, we need more time.
We need a little bit. We're a little bit ahead, so we can keep chatting for a few more. So let's go over goal by goal. Goal 1.
Sure. Thank you.
I think a lot of my sort of concerns about goal 1 were addressed in our overarching, and that that the community would like to have more information about how we're measuring these things. So that, I think that's really a concern that we would hear from the community. Like if it's just this that we're presenting to them.
Sarah, I'm wondering if the strategies are what we're being measured on, I believe, right? If you look at it, because it's like adopting and implementing culturally relevant curricula, right? That's something very specific that we'll be able to see whether or not it happens. And so maybe the strategies, it could be clarified what that's how we're being measured. Is that what you mean?
And I think that, yes, we can measure if we're adopting and implementing culturally relevant criteria, but that doesn't tell us how our students are doing. Right now, if I were a community member looking at this, it doesn't look like there's a strategy there for, like, how are we going to teach kids what they need to know to be successful when they leave our system.
I don't know if that's that goal, though, excellent learning experience. It's about their experience learning, right? It needs to be more clear.
We need to have not just the experience, but the outcome has to be part of that goal. Because we are in the business of educating students. We can provide a great experience to our students and not have them be achieving what they need to achieve to be successful. So the outcome of this experience has to be part of what we're looking at with academic excellence.
I see Sammy is like ready to, and so is Therese. Let's go to Therese, because Therese hasn't talked yet.
I completely concur. Oh, I'm sorry, go for it.
No, I feel like I think you're going to explode, so you go first.
Out of excitement. So I concur with Sarah's point, which is, let's look at this goal and let's take a step back. What we do as an institution, we create experiences in order to provide opportunities so we have outcomes. This goal captures only, as Sarah mentioned, the experiences. And we need to really grapple with community expectations of, some folks say outcomes is all what matters. And some folks say, no, it's the opportunities. As long as we bridge the opportunity gap and give the students the opportunity to succeed, That's what we need to focus on, and outcomes will follow that. And this goal, correctly so, focuses on the experiences that provides the means for both the opportunities, the outcomes. So in conclusion, my proposal or suggestion is we need to really look deeper into this goal and say, should we only capture the experiences, or should we capture experiences, opportunities, and outcomes, and report that to the community so they see how we're doing on those 3 dimensions?
I want to ask a clarifying question then, based on what I've heard so far. Because when I look at this goal, what I think about is what comes at the end of the descriptor. I think about critical thinking. I think about solving problems creatively, communicating effectively, and engaging positively with the broader world. So to me, those are the 4 outcomes that are drawn up in this description. If that's not what you're hoping to achieve, or if you want it to be put in a place that is more, where people are going to have more focus, that's okay too. I'm just asking for clarification there, because when I read it, those are the end is what stands out to me, not the beginning.
I think all of those outcomes are great outcomes. I don't think it's all that our community is looking for. And so I think we're missing a piece that our community is going to look at this and say, yeah, but what about, can they do math? And can they read? And the academic pieces. I mean, I think these are all really important.
Yeah.
But as, the stewards of the school district for our community, I don't think it's answering what the community is looking for.
Got it.
So I'm generally in agreement with the overarching sentiment. It's not that it isn't in this goal, it's that it isn't in any goal. And I'm not sure if the solution is to say, well, let's stick it into goal 1, because there's a lot about the focus on thinking critically and solving problems creatively, communicating effectively, engaging positively with the broader world. Those are wonderful things, and we do not want those to not be a focus. So I don't know that we want to take away from those, but I also do hear, okay, and I think that I think what I'm aware of is that math, which is the thing we're going to hear about, students who can do these things will also be able to do math. It's not one or the other. And I know that, and I also know that if we were to break down the activities and measures and indicators, that somewhere in that, those other things that we're talking about, they are there. It's not like there's going to be no outcomes. But I think that it would be concerning for folks if they read this and they can't see that the board is declaring that these things are important. It's not that it's important that, it's not important because what am I trying to say? I think what is important is that we make sure that we're very clear that these things work together with each other and that it's not one or the other of those. And so I'll just stop with that, because a lot has already been said, and so I'll leave. For goal 1, that's what I'll say about that. And I don't know if I love the title. Excellent learning experience does feel a little bit customer servicey, and I feel like I'm going to be asked to rate it like with 1 to 5 stars, and I don't like that. Maybe I don't have another word for it, but I do feel it does conjure those thoughts for me. And anyway, that's it.
My mic's found now. Okay, I wanted to see if Shauna and Judah had any comments on goal 1, or if Eileen had any feedback as well as a student voice, if you would like. I'm not trying to call you out, just offering the space.
Just briefly, I really appreciated what was said about having a profile of what a successful student looks like after their time with the Corvallis School District to capture what we're going for at the beginning, because it is pretty easy to get lost in the weeds. But if we're saying that we're trying to prepare students to be successful, academically with these standards, but also emotionally and culturally, that puts a really nice frame on what's the point of why we're setting what we're setting. Thank you.
I think I brought out at the board retreat when I was going around that I thought excellent learning experience, like you guys were saying, didn't really capture that had to do with the outcome too.
Shauna hasn't gone at all, so I think we should let Shauna go first.
I was going to dive into strategy, so I'm shifting a little bit. But Sammy, if your comment was directly related, maybe it should go first.
To respond to the point or the clarifying question, I feel, yes, we gotta capture both. Reading and math could matter for some folks, but also it does matter to create opportunities and outcomes for the bottom line that we have here. Reflecting on this conversation and discussions with community members, some who don't care about reading, but they realize eventually if you want to negotiate a contract or think critically, eventually you need to read the contract. So reading is a tool to achieve to access those opportunities, eventually get the outcomes. I really strongly advocate we center the experiences, focus on the opportunities, deliver the outcomes, and capture those intermediary important milestones for community members and our institutions, math, reading, in order to capture those outcomes at the bottom line. And honestly, the framing of the goal might need to be changed in a way where we say that, we actually say that we will create experiences, but here are the opportunities that you're gonna get, and here's the outcomes that we're gonna deliver eventually.
All right, I'm going to take things just in another, or just moving further into strategies, but also wanted to just say that I really agree with where the conversation is going, and a lot of what's coming up here at the board, as well as with you too, from our student representative, Eileen, I heard echoed during the community meeting as well, and so I really appreciate that this is coming back up as we continue to grapple with that language. As I was looking into the strategies and also thinking about I think there are a couple of different levels of the feedback loops, the benchmarks, marks and outcomes, and how we go about evaluating them, that getting a little bit more detailed in the strategies, which that was the one area to me that also feels a little bit underdeveloped at this point, which I know that's the intention. But there was quite a bit that I just listed down here in case helpful to think about, things like differentiated learning. When we're thinking about how do we get to those outcomes once we fine-tune the language around that, pieces that seem to be missing right now are well-supported teachers and staff related to professional development for this to happen and move forward than to the student level. And so something I'm thinking about is both what are the ways that we're measuring those outcomes for students, but also the effectiveness of the strategies being used. So thinking about here with the curricula, that would be one piece of looking at what feedback loops are in place to be able to assess how well the curricula is working, how well staff are able to differentiate that curricula, how well prepared they feel to deliver those curricula and supported in that process. I also was wondering about, I know under healthy communities later, families come up in terms of education for families, which seems to be more related to their own health and well-being perhaps, or their relationships with their children, but a question around strategies for engaging families in the learning process, or partnering or collaborating with families across school and home. And then another piece I was thinking about was student voice in all of this, and how student voice might be reflected either in evaluation of this, or also now even in the process when these strategies and goals are finalized, just for something for us to think about.
Okay, there it goes. I had a couple. Yeah.
With student voice, do you see that in the past it's been under equitable systems is where we have really highlighted student voice? Would you see that as a appropriate place for that strategy, or would you see it in the relevance or the community? I mean, I can see it on all three. And so is there a place that, as you're thinking about it, you think it is best suited?
maybe in what Lou was speaking about of having a preamble, or of having that narrative at the start that sets that up as a value across each of the outcomes, because I think it is different here under equitable systems in terms of looking at student voice related to equitable access, equitable support, to the whatever outcomes we identify that are related to that goal are going to be different goals. The approach to student voice might be similar across all of the goals, but the specific types of information or feedback we're seeking and what groups we're approaching or collaborating with may vary too under each goal. So I wonder if that's something that gets pulled out as more of an overarching value.
Okay. Yeah, put it up at the top. Thanks.
I really like that, Shauna, that suggestion for it to be up there, because I'm not a fan of when it's just a repeated thing that becomes a boilerplate on anything. Like, it just kind of loses its meaning at that point. And so, like, having it over the top, I think, would be really helpful, and it really shows that there's that commitment across boards, goals for the students. One thing I did want to point out is, like, I do think it's really important to put including families on things, and I want to make sure that we don't exclude students who don't have families. And so I think we need to be careful on how we're framing it and make sure that those students also feel included when we're putting it into the board goals. One of the things I want to suggest too is for one of the strategies that may help with kind of our conversation. If we have the state requirements, we have the student profile that we would like on there, I think that's an excellent idea as well, because it can include a lot of this, is having a strategy perhaps that says something along the lines of students are prepared for post-high school futures. And I think that would be helpful, because I know there's a strong emphasis in this, or there's a lot of conversation tonight that's focused on math, and not all futures require the heavy math either. And I want to make sure that we're not building goals that are excluding students in that capacity either, where they feel left out of our goals, because it's based on certain careers or certain trajectories that students have. And so perhaps if it's worded in a way that sounds more inclusive, and we have those requirements up top with the profile, that way it's not based on like very specific, like, if you don't read at this level, then we're not talking about you. If you're not in this math, we're not, you know what I mean? I want to make sure that we're being very inclusive of all of the students in the district. Go ahead, Therese.
To that point, I wanted to say that something that I don't know how we do this exactly, but I think, we've talked about standardized measurements and their bias and the problems with relying on things like SATs and such. And I think one of the things that we have to recognize is that as we're talking about linking ODE and these measures, these things that we're accountable to the state to reflect on, that what we're accountable to reflect back to the state is a profile of a student that does not capture everyone in our district. And there isn't really anything in here that explicitly calls out that despite or alongside the fact that we have to report these outcomes, that reading levels, there are important, of course, and that comprehension and growth in math is important, and we're not trying to say that they're not important. What we are trying to say is that we have students that are extremely valuable, and those indicators, they are not going to speak to those students. And so when we incorporate benchmarks, I do think there's some value in calling out the benchmarks that we are incorporating because we're state mandated or federally mandated to call out, versus the ones that we are including because as a community, we value these things and we think that they're really important. And so we are still pushing, and I don't know if not everybody's pushing back against, I'm pushing back against the idea that post-high school success is defined by whether they enroll in college. I think post-high school success is defined by whether or not they are members that feel like they can participate in their community, and that will look very different for each individual. And one of the things I like about the first goal is that it does leave room that everybody needs to think critically, everybody needs to be able to solve problems, everyone needs to be able to communicate. These are not college-specific skills. We will have to measure these other things, but those aren't the only indicators that are going to be important to us. And I think we need to be really explicit about that. in a way that because it informs goal number 2, specifically around equity and around recognizing that equitable systems is not ODE, they are not an equitable system, that they're not, and we are bound to them, but a lot of what we are required to do runs afoul of what we are wanting to do out of goal number 2, and that's a dissonance that I don't think we can ignore, but I'm not sure the best place to capture it, but I don't think we can ignore it.
Well, and one of the things that, like one of the discrete examples I think about a lot is that our 5-year cohort graduation rate includes kids who have earned a GED, while our 4-year graduation rate does not. That's a specific example where that outcome for a student is not accounted for as a success until a year down the road. And the same thing as you think about students who are coming to us who are emerging bilingual in the middle of their high school career from another country without any credits, that success, that there's more time needed to meet those successes that we're hoping kids have when they leave us. So that system does not account for, our current system does not account for those students unless we think more about the 5-year cohort rate.
Thank you. I think we're going to have to move on to, yeah. Is it really like critical that you can't email Ryan about? Okay. Oh, you've been, okay, really quick.
I was just going to say, I think that's why the profile of a graduate is important.
Because we have to.
I was just going to say, I think that's why the profile of a graduate is important rather than saying our graduates will have this test score or this thing, that it's a broader understanding of what.
Mine is a quick one about strategy 2. The professionals will understand what are the 5 dimensions without needing to look them up. I recommend we spell them out, at least the dimensions, not the sub-dimensions, and also have a reference to them. So if we're talking about Framework 4.0, we decide to change that as they change it to 5.0, people know where to look for and really understand what we're talking about. Because this is publicly, oh, it's been said. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
It's fine, Sammy. You were not listening, just kidding. No, that's why I suggested like it drop down, like with some of these key terms, like on the bottom, like a hyperlink that goes down to them. That way they're, and then a lot of what Therese said is the reason why I suggested it just be like prepared for post-high school futures, because it's like more inclusive than like, and I work for higher ed too, and I'm saying that, so. Yeah, a lot of us do. So, and we're suggesting that there's other futures even, yeah, but okay, I think we really need to move on to, because we have other goals, and we cannot spend this amount of time on every goal. So we're gonna have to be a little bit more concise in our thoughts. Just kidding. Does anybody have comments on goal 2? Or is that the perfect goal? I'm just kidding. There's no perfect goal.
Well, I think I already shared my major concern with goal 2 around recognizing that we have accountability to things that don't necessarily inform our equity framework. And so the only other thing I would add to, actually, nope, that thought is not formed enough. Maybe I'll come back to it, but maybe I won't.
Do you have something?
I'm ready to jump on goal 3.
Okay, well, is there any other comments on goal 2?
I'll just bring up one comment on goal 2. I've written a question down here. Under goal 4, we do mention students where every student belongs, but I'm wondering, when I think about equitable systems and the description that's under here, part of that comes up for me is belonging for all students, staff, and families as part of that aim. So I'm just wondering if that would be something that it would make sense to bring in to this goal.
Like in the description?
Mm-hmm. And then also then thinking about, that might also help guide some of the strategies, because I've been looking at these strategies here and thinking about some of the groups. And we might infer that SAFE, Pride, the DEDI group, Delta, sort of fit within some of these strategies, but just thinking about making sure some of those efforts that are happening are really called out, where those relationships are being built, and voices are being given a chance to really inform and connect with the school district in meaningful ways.
Maybe that could be one of the footnotes, because names of groups may change.
Right.
And so that way it's not like we're having to readopt them if the
Yeah.
group name changes, if it's,
That makes sense.
that's a good point, because every group that you talked about is listed in the strategies, but not in the description.
Well, and then thinking about the fourth strategy where it says enhance family and community engagement in meaningful ways, that could be another place where groups are potentially recommended. And I would add student to that list as well.
Cool. Okay, I didn't mean to say we can't talk, but I mean, I felt pretty good about this goal. I'm not,
No,
I mean, I was in that work group just for transparency for everybody. But if there's other comments on it. And then, okay, and then we're on goal 3 then.
Thanks. I just wanted to say that I really do appreciate all the community input we've received around the idea of sustainability and adding that to our goals, and I do agree. I think we should add it. I do like the eco literacy, adding that to this, and then maybe even like looking at how we can add it a little bit more in this goal about sustainability.
When we had the real world learning goal before, sustainability was in that goal, and it's somehow gotten removed. And I don't think that was intentional. I think it was just we were dealing with so much input.
As I read this, I think it falls into that area of evolving future, because one of the things I was able to do was walk around during the retreat and listen to each individual group. And one of the things they talked a lot about was how to word that last component, because there was some, I guess, stress about how disheartening that can feel and overwhelming that can feel, and at the same time how to make sure that it's included but somewhat aspirational. And so I think it's in that group's mind, it's still there, but it's embedded within that evolving future component. Calling it out is totally fine, but I don't think that group would say that it was lost or left out. They would say that it's embedded in that language.
I do remember those conversations as well, and I did think that it was embedded into each of the goals. And so, but I do think that it needs to be specific and noted on each one as well.
Yeah, I want to join my thoughts to that. And the evolving future is very encompassing, and at the least, I would recommend that fourth strategy be there. Something of sorts embody stewardship and sustainability in learning and operation. By stewardship and sustainability, we're capturing environmental, fiscal sustainability. And by stewardship, we're reflecting responsibility to the community, to our families, to our neighborhoods, and to our communities. And by capturing learning and operations is how we do our work, but also what we're learning from. I believe without a fourth strategy like that, evolving future as a very overarching goal might be very vague, and we either need to spell it out there in the goal or at least have a strategy that makes that dimension clear. And while I have the floor, my last suggestion for this goal, Eileen and I were there in the group, and I want to channel the group's critique of real-world learning. What's not real-world learning? And that's where they evolved into, let's talk about relevant and engaging learning. And it changed into the goal, but it stayed in the statement. And while real-world learning might have a definition technically for the experts in education, and we may say what it is, but they felt relevant learning experiences to prepare them, or that prepares them for an evolving future, might be much more descriptive of what we're trying to capture. It's either relevant or irrelevant, and education should be always relevant, and those are some dimensions that we're trying to capture. So I want to advocate for that, and I want to invite Eileen, if you recall anything from the conversation, if you want to elevate that too. You don't have to.
It's Shauna and Judah. Teresa, did you go on this goal yet? Okay, you three, if you have thoughts on this. Sarah, you went already, didn't you? Or did Sarah go?
I just said we need to include sustainability.
Okay, you did go, okay,
somewhere, yeah.
okay, yeah.
I have one, but Teresa, I couldn't see if you had a hand.
go ahead.
Okay, thank you. One thing I was thinking about as well, and to your point too, Sammy, and from Eileen's as well, is there's no place in here yet where music, arts, other specials, physical education fit in, and so often those are real-world learning experiences that we don't often call that, but it's where students are putting into practice their learning-related skills, as well as other skills into other art forms, and developing some of those practices for healthy lifestyles long-term. So I'm wondering if that's something we can add in as a call-out of the importance of that as part of relevant and engaging learning.
So yes to that, everything you just said, all of that. I've always felt like the term real world conjures a really narrow picture, but in our daily lives, we encounter a lot of skills that people use that bring wonderful things into our lives that do not fit into that picture of real world learning, and so I think it'd be wonderful to call it out. And then the only other thing that I would add about this is I would be very, very proud to be a school district that has a goal that specifically acknowledges that climate change, global warming is real, it's a problem, it's particularly detrimental to certain groups of people, and we cannot do equity work if we do not address it. And we have to prepare our children to be able to address it. Their futures depend on it. But going back to equity and all the work that we are talking about, all the work we've done, we know that the negative outcomes of this do not reach all of us equally. And so I would love to see that someplace. I think it would be awesome if everybody in Oregon was like, whoa, Corvallis is like talking about global warming within their goals. That's a label I would love to have.
Judah, do you have anything?
I was just thinking of how to say what Therese just said, and so thank you so much for your comments. That was beautifully put, and I really appreciated that. I echo that sentiment.
Thank you. And my comment on this one was that the climate crisis is extremely real, and it's something that students in our district in particular, as well as all over the world, are worried about and facing. And you see a lot of stuff about like how they're like, thanks for us inheriting this mess, right, of these choices that have led us here. I wanted to thank John for bringing in the term eco-literacy for us to consider, and I actually prefer using that because for people that don't understand the importance of talking about climate change, having the word literacy next to it helps us understand it as a critical part of education. And I think that if we have the values that we've said we have as a district, that this has a place here. I don't know if it goes in there with the, was it multi-literacy that said, or if it's its own strategy, but I really encourage us to bring that in there as a term, whether or not we include climate change, which has a little bit of a different kind of landing than global warming. I think that's more what we should lean towards too, just, yeah. But, and we see it all around us. I mean, we had like, how many weeks of smoke we were sitting through like this summer, right? And that impacted everybody's crops and their gardens, right? And it's getting worse every summer. So I think these are things that we're seeing happening at an alarmingly fast rate. So like having it termed eco-literacy again is like, really helpful, and people understanding the importance of it as an educational component. And so that was my comment on that. I can talk all night about this, but I think we have one more goal to talk about. Goal 4.
Okay, I worked on this goal, so the only thing that I want to say about it, and then I want it to go to other people, is that you really have to fix the grammar. This goal does not start like the other ones, and it is kind of making me a little bit nuts. But I don't want to comment on the content of it because I was too involved in that, but we do have to change that.
I also, on the strategies, want to change, or just suggest that number 3 flows with 1, 2, and 4, because it doesn't. Also,
Can you say that one more time? With your teacher voice.
Strategy number 3
Okay.
doesn't flow with 1, 2, and 4, because they say foster. And so I just would like to change that so that they all kind of are aligned.
Thanks.
And then also, I wonder, and I would want to ask the experts on this, but we did have experts in the group. But when we're talking about nurturing the social, emotional, mental, and physical health and well-being, I also think we need to honor it, because honoring wellness is a form of keeping kids well, right? And so, and validating. So I don't know if that's a word we can, or an idea we can add to that, but I do think that it's really important, because nurture doesn't seem strong enough.
Number 2 under the strategies lands funny with me. It sounds a little bit like promotion of marriage or something like that, like growing families. So I don't know how to say that differently, but there was something about how that was worded that just felt, first it's focused on families, leaves out students who may not be living in a family, and growing families seemed kind of odd somehow.
The other thing with that one too is it's like the assumption that families don't have education too. There could be that perceived like landing of the wording that we did not mean for it to say. I know that's not what it was meant to be, but yeah.
Okay. I have a few comments, or just a few potential additions to be thinking about, especially related to strategies. One, in being part of the discussion with this group on healthy communities, a big focus was thinking about healthy communities broadly, being students and all of those supporting students. And I don't yet, in the strategy, see staff reflected. And so thinking about, here, we even mentioned foster student belonging. What about staff belonging? Thinking about staff well-being as part of a healthy community. And I just wonder around strategies focused on manageable workloads, or staff health and well-being, as well as student well-being. And another thing that I don't see yet reflected in the strategies are some of the amazing work that the district is already doing in some of the wraparound supports that are happening for families, for students, both around things like you shared today, Ryan, with meals, but also some of the supports that are going out to families to help connect families to resources, to help ensure their well-being, toward the aim of also supporting their students and bringing their students here into school ready to learn and surrounded with that support. So I feel like that's not yet reflected. A lot of the amazing work that's happening in the district related to those family relationships in strategies, as well as more that could be pulled out and focused on related to staff well-being in addition to students.
Thanks, Shauna. Before we do more comments, Aileen, I wanted to point out it's 8:15, so I don't know how long you wanted to stay, but there's like the student, if you needed to go time. But I just wanted to make sure you know what time it was. Yeah, yeah. You can totally stay, though. I just wanted to make sure you knew. Okay. Anybody else have comments? Sammy?
Uh, I like the goal with all the comments that were shared. I feel the way that you read the goal, we might confuse the process indicators with the outcome indicators or the lagging indicators. So I want to make sure as we go into indicators, we're going to be very clear that we're going to measure both. And ultimately, we want to hold ourselves accountable as much as we can, because this is an outcome of the whole village, not only the school system, that we're measuring the social determinants of health, we're measuring the health determinants, the health outcomes that determine success in school. That's the outcome, how well our students are doing socially, emotionally, mentally, and physically, and also how well we're doing to nurture and foster that environment for them. And maybe this is among all other goals, but this goal makes the wording of it at least makes me see the focus on the process and not much mentioning the outcomes that we want to see. And I'm struggling when I read it the first time. After a couple of reads, I see like we're capturing both. So just a reminder for ourselves, however we word it, we really need to be focused on the end results as much as we're focusing on describing what we're doing to get there.
Anybody else? Judah, you got anything online?
Nothing that can't wait. I'm struggling with this goal a lot because of the way that we're capturing communities where our children are living, but I think that as a board, we're grappling with that. So I do think that we need to put some thought into this.
Thank you. I had a couple things. One of them is just like similar to the other terminologies that people may not know what SEL means. So like having that little drop down what those standards are, if that's going to be in there. And I think I was kind of not sure about using the terminology rightful presence too, because there's a little bit of, it depends on who's defining what that means. And yeah, so I think that came up in our group too with that kind of terminology, the rightful presence piece. And I don't know how to get it, I know what it's trying to say, I just, sometimes people have a different perception of what that means. And so it's kind of hard to, yeah, but that's my only comments on that. Any other comments on the board goals? I think I'm sure we'll have more, the more we think about it. I did want to say when I did give the thank you for the eco-literacy, I mentioned John because you are here, and there was also other community members that emailed us with that terminology as well, so I wanted to make sure we did not overlook them too. But yeah, so okay. We are over time a lot, and should we take a, oh, sorry, Sarah, go ahead. Oh yeah, that's what I was gonna say, should we take it? I was just gonna ask the staff if they're okay, because it's at the calendar. Are you okay if we take a 5? Okay, we're gonna take a 5, and then we'll come back to school calendar revisions. Okay, we're back. I look very confused on the screen. That's going to be great on YouTube. Thanks for that close-up. Do you all want to come up? We have Nikki and Kim and Amy. Wait, Nikki's not. Nikki's not here. I was reading off the thing, so you all are here to talk about the school calendar revisions 24-25.
All right, we're just kind of seeing what questions you had.
Sammy looks like he has a question, and so does Sarah.
I just was wondering, with the makeup days at the end of the year,
Yes.
if we have those days, how are we going to handle Juneteenth?
Tell me, like, it wouldn't be a school day.
Because it would probably be that Monday, wouldn't it?
No, the makeup days are the 16th, 17th, and 18th.
Okay, and so it's not on the calendar, because, okay. Okay.
Other questions?
Just editorial changes, I believe 2023, it should be 2024.
I see that.
This is tongue-in-cheek, President's Day. Which president? Because the apostrophe should be after that.
Duly noted. Nikki. Just kidding.
Any other comments, Therese?
Oh my gosh. Chris made really good cookies, so my apologies. I just wanted to revisit the discussion around winter break. I seem to recall when we had winter break start so close to the holiday, the last time around, there was some not happiness about that. And so I just wanted to just check in and see your thoughts about the pros and cons of having it be in this particular window.
My recollection, and correct me if anybody else has a different memory, was that the bigger
Can you
issue
talk
was
more in the mic?
that it was
Thank you.
not aligned with OSU, that it was a different winter break.
Those were
And-
definitely not the emails we got. We got a
Okay.
lot of emails about parenting plans, and we got a lot of emails about the holiday being 2 days after the break, and what are we going to do with our kids after that. And I do remember some conversation about OSU, but I remember a lot, like a dozen or more emails about parenting plans, and that's all.
Okay, there's no revision to this really around winter break. So the revision that we're bringing back to you doesn't necessarily have implications from the calendar that you already approved, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the only revision is that students were going to be off on Friday the 20th, but we're going to maintain that, in this revision, we're going to maintain that as a school day, and the break actually starts on Monday instead of the Friday before.
What we're trying to accomplish in this is to recognize that our year is bookended by Labor Day and by Juneteenth. Whenever we do surveys of this community, the community does not want to start school before Labor Day, and we want to make sure that folks are out by Juneteenth, so there's not an issue with that. At the same time, we know that we need that first day to be a soft start as kids return, and it allows us to do things with 6th graders, 9th graders, kinders. That was the feedback from this year because we didn't have that day, and so we're trying to take that feedback into account and address that in these revisions. So I think as I look at it, I think more about it's a response to what we heard this fall, and so we're making that adjustment now with close to 12 months of notice.
Any other discussion? Does anyone wish to make a motion?
Should we change the 23-24 because submitted without objection first? So I seek unanimous consent to change first day of school presented Wednesday, September 4 to 2023 into Wednesday, September 4, 2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Sammy and seconded by Sarah by unanimous consent. Is there any objections? Okay. Do I hear a motion for a second motion?
I move to adopt the revised 2024-25 school calendar as revised.
Second.
It was moved by Sammy and seconded by Sarah to adopt the revised 2024-25 school calendar as revised. Sammy? We got to vote.
Yes.
Sarah?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
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 Judah?
Aye.
And I vote aye. That has passed unanimously. Thank you, too, for your time. Okay. Next, we have the division. Ooh, we're like half hour behind. How are we so? I was like, wow, we're really behind. Division 22 report and action, and this is Melissa.
So I put the Division 22 report in the board report, so hopefully you took a look at it. I think the things that I'd like to point out, especially for Judah and Chris, this is new for you. The Division 22 report is a report that we have to put together every year to tell the state that we're complying with the law about what we are providing in our public schools. And so we're kind of auditing ourselves. This year, there are 2 areas where we're out of compliance. And when you're out of compliance, you do have to create a corrective action plan. So I wrote about that in the cover sheet. It's going to be a difficult corrective action because there's a lot of things to consider. So I think what's important to talk about when it comes to PE minutes in elementary and middle, if we take them, let's take them separately. PE minutes in elementary are supposed to be 150 minutes of physical education instruction by a licensed teacher each week. Yes, and in order to make that happen, that's 30 minutes per day by a licensed instructor. And at this point in time, our elementary students are receiving 60 minutes with a licensed PE instructor. It's always been that way. Prior to this, we've counted physical activity minutes, time, recess, those kinds of opportunities for our students to be physically active, but that doesn't count. And so that's why we are out of compliance. The 2 points that you see there for corrective action, both corrective actions are pretty similar. We're going to have to study the problem this year and see what we can do. The concern is that the fix is going to, it's going to result in some things that people aren't going to probably like very much. So that's going to be the challenge. When it comes to middle school, we talked about this last year at the same time in this board meeting, that we were not going to be able to meet those minutes this for 22-23, and that is the case even with the reduction in minutes that the state is putting forward as a result of some legislative action this summer. But and that has to do with our trimester schedule, and the middle school levels meeting happened today. We were talking to principals and assistant principals about how we're going to also have to take a look at the problem and see what we can do in order to resolve that. And I put some options in there, but there might be other things. We're going to start talking creatively about how we can make sure that our kids meet those minutes without reducing their elective opportunities. And quite honestly, if we require 2 PE classes of our students on a trimester schedule, they will lose the opportunity to take some year-long electives, and our DLI students would be more heavily impacted in that. They would lose the opportunity to take some year-long electives, and that's not something that we're really that interested in doing. So again, another really difficult problem to take a look at. Beyond that, we have one other corrective action that's going to come before the board in November, and that had to do with the adoption of our French curriculum. But other than that, we are in compliance with everything else in Division 22. Are there any questions? Wonderful.
Okay, there's no questions. Does anyone wish to make a motion?
I move to approve the Division 22 report for submission to ODE and to be published on the district website, and authorize the district to include up to 30 hours of professional development time, up to 30 hours for parent-teacher conferences, and up to 60 hours of recess for students in grades kindergarten through third for calculation of instructional hours.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Therese and seconded by Sammy. Is there any further discussion?
Is it okay if I ask a question at this point? I think I didn't quite have the question in my mind before things moved forward for a motion to be able to ask it. Is that appropriate for a discussion point?
That's fine.
Okay, thank you. Melissa, I have a question. Just in understanding this, I'm thinking a lot about, right now, just taking the issue of elementary school physical education, and definitely understanding at this point in the school year of not being able to increase licensed instructional time, and also thinking about the research on the differences between physical education classes and what happens at recess. And there is a difference in the amount of energy that children are able to get out of their bodies and use in productive ways, practicing social skills and all of that. We actually have some of the lead researchers around this at OSU who we could also hear from at some point if helpful. But my question around that is, I know that we are also having ongoing discussions about not enough aides in the classrooms, behavioral challenges, that actually having more instructional time in PE could help address as well, in terms of giving children healthy opportunities to get some of that energy out so that they're better able to be in the classroom space. So I guess my question with all of that context is this a temporary short-term fix and adjustment to be in compliance for this year that has an opportunity to be looked at in other ways in future years? Or is this, how long is the fix that we're looking at versus being able to readdress or really look at the pros and cons when we have budget opportunities to do so?
So the corrective action is an action so we're already out of compliance, so we're done. So what we're trying to tell the state is what we're going to be doing for the next school year so that we can be in compliance. And so it's supposed to be an ongoing correction. And so are you talking about maybe piloting some things or trying some things different this year to see what would work?
Well, I guess that's what I'm asking there.
Okay.
Is this corrective action just for this school year, or is it for this biennium? How long is this corrective action, the solution, versus
it's
annually?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
If I may add to that, we have to implement effectively the corrective action within a year, correct? Other than that, if that does not happen, there might be ODE consequences. And our intention is we will conclude by the end of the year with the compliance, correct?
Every other time that we've been out of compliance and we've proposed a corrective action, we've made sure the corrective action was in place. And Ryan he gets an email usually in the summer that says, have you instituted your corrective action? And he has to say yes or no, so yeah.
Cool. Any other discussion? Alrighty, it was moved by Director Labdra and seconded by Director Finger McDonald to approve, oh wait. It was the other way around. Okay, just kidding. It was moved by Therese and seconded by Sammy to approve the Division 22 report for submission to ODE and to be published on the district website, and authorize the district to include up to 30 hours of professional development time, up to 30 hours for parent-teacher conferences, and up to 60 hours of recess for students in grades kindergarten through grade 3 for calculation of instructional hours. That's a really long motion. So, how do you vote, Sammy?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Therese?
Aye.
Shauna?
Aye.
Judah?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you. All righty. Next is, yeah, thank you, Melissa. Next is consolidated action. As a reminder, the items under this portion of the agenda are for action. Wait. What was that?
We have the construction excise tax.
Oh,
Yeah, I was like, I'm like, what? Yeah, it's under the, yeah, everything's under the action. Okay, thank you.
It wasn't that, so I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. We're talking about the school construction exercise tax rates, which are under consolidated action. So, okay, as a reminder, these items are for action. Does anyone have a question about anything in consolidated action? Sammy?
I want to pull out 23-1001 for just discussion and notes, and then we'll put it back.
Which one?
The increased school construction.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
So I just want to provide framing to this point. I want to acknowledge this is an increase of tax that the legislator gave us the purview to do, and I want to acknowledge there was discussion last meeting for it, but one thing I want to make sure we're acknowledging here is that since it was implemented, we did not catch up with inflation, and now we're setting a new tax limit that catch up with the inflation within the boundaries of what we're allowed to. So while it is very acknowledged, it's a big jump, but the way I would frame it is in the past years, the community or folks who had to pay this tax got that discount, and now the discount is no longer there, if that makes sense. So I want to acknowledge that there is an impact on folks who might be paying more now because of it, but it is part of why it is necessary to maintain our facilities and catch up with maintenance on an annual basis. That's how I see it, and I'm wondering if my colleagues agree with that. Just want to make sure we're transparent, that we acknowledge the burden, but it is part of what keeps our schools up to date, and we minimize the cost. And I'm wondering if the framing that I'm finding here is accurate or appropriate.
Yeah, I think that's a fair framing. What I would say is, here's some examples of things that we've used the construction excise tax for historically, because I think that's as important in terms of context. So we've used it for things like when we did exterior painting at Franklin K-8 several years ago, prior to the bond. Linus Pauling Middle School, we had to do a boiler replacement. At Linus Pauling, we've done a modular classroom based on student count. Added counseling offices at Linus Pauling. At Corvallis High School, we added the entry vestibule. Again, safety and security that we were putting into other schools through the bond. Crescent Valley High School's entry vestibule was another example of how we use these construction excise dollars. The tennis court resurfacing that happened out at CV, that was another example. The lift station, which is out at Crescent Valley, and it is the sewer pump that was kind of right along Highland there. That was replaced, and we needed to pay for that. So those are some examples of things that we've used those dollars for in the past.
Any further discussion or items? Any motions?
I move that we approve the items in consolidated action.
Second.
Okay, any final discussion? Oh, it has been moved by Sarah and second by Sammy. Any further discussion? Okay. It's been moved by Sarah and second by Sammy to adopt the consolidated action items as submitted. I'm doing the vote. Sammy?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Therese?
Aye.
Shauna?
Aye.
Judah?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion passes. Consolidated action. And the next part for consolidated information, just for folk to know that JGE expulsion was pulled for this evening to review the language and add some clarity. So that one, we're not going to be reviewing this. If you already reviewed it, it's going to come back up. So is there any other, as a reminder, it's getting late. As a reminder, the items under this portion of the agenda are for discussion other than policy JGE. Would anyone like to discuss an item in consolidated information? Okay, I see 2 hands up. Go ahead.
I just have a quick change to JBC.
JBC. Which one?
Same.
Okay, JBC, okay. I have something for policy ACAR as well. Anything else that we want to discuss? Okay, let's start with JBC since you all pulled that.
Yeah, it's really simple. So we changed the title from transgender and gender nonconforming to gender expansive, but in the first paragraph, there's still that language is still used. So I would say, can we change where it says district and schools is designed to ensure a culture where transgender and gender nonconforming students. So can we change that to, yeah, that's mine.
Well, and we had a discussion on that. I want to just acknowledge when I hear from constituents and friends about this policy, or families, parents, about this policy, part of it is to really center the identities and not to hide them. In gender expansive, I struggle about the umbrella term, and it's defined here. I believe if it is necessary, maybe it needs to be as a comma and we still acknowledge transgender and gender nonconforming students as their identity and reiterate that. And if there's additions that we need to add, and I understand sometimes it's not mutual exclusive, so there's an overlap. Yes, and acknowledging acknowledging them in the header, I think, is going to be very important because our transgender and gender nonconforming students continue to ask and demand to be seen and to be acknowledged. And I believe the minimum we can do is to center that as an identity, even though there might be an umbrella term that captures them all, if that makes sense. Similarly, I'm not sure if it's similar, but the best analogous I can think of, when we had educational equity, I struggled with it when we learned from who advised us, staff and students, racial educational equity should be front and center, and if we address racial educational equity, you can address all the umbrella inequities for other factors and dimensions, but we need to center racial and we call it out. Same thing here, I feel it must be acknowledged.
Thank you. I must have talked too much and my mic died. Just kidding. I had a similar question about that, Melissa. I know that it's like ODE language. I looked it up and informed by like some national stuff, and I'm wondering if the terminology gender expansive is one that the students that this policy is meant for, if that's something they would like us to use in the district.
Okay.
And so that would be like I don't want to speak for the students, and I just want to, because I believe it's a newer term too. It's not like super old or anything like that, and I don't know if it's in use by the students in our district. And so I want to make sure we're not like inserting language.
Okay.
And if it is the language they want us to use, all good, but
Yeah.
I just want to make sure first, because I think sometimes we, like I know it was a national effort that surveyed students, our youth in general, not just students, and to come up with the terminology and get feedback and stuff like that. I just want to make sure that it reaches the students we want it to. And so that was the only thing, my comment on that. And I had emailed about like some other missing terminologies, right? Yeah, and so we can talk more, but maybe we take more time for a second read on this one is my suggestion.
Yeah,
so we can
and
get that feedback.
A couple of things too. I struggle with gender nonconforming because to me it sounds like there's a right way to be, and this person is not. So that's why gender nonconforming doesn't sound great. And transgender is part of the definitions in the back, which is what we were talking about, that there are some definitions that are missing. Sabrina's over here, and she's dying in her seat, so we can let her come up too.
Do you want to come up, Sabrina?
Sabrina worked with the counseling group that was the subcommittee that worked through this, and has more insight on that conversation that took place among that group. So I'm wondering if she can, and I also see Judah has his hand up too.
Oh yeah, Judah, do you want to, so we can see if Sabrina can answer all of our questions at once?
I would prefer to hear from Sabrina because my comments may be irrelevant and they were there, so.
Okay.
Hi, friends. Yeah, so I think the piece I'd add from that is that the process of building this was a combination of staff that were predominantly school counselors and social workers who have been the staff supporting students in this process. We had an opportunity to get this in front of students, as well as staff who identify themselves as transgender or gender expansive, and the feedback was pretty overwhelming that this was the preferred language. And I think, to your point, in support of some of the more kind of nationally done data collections in terms of what they want to see, I appreciate your point, Sammy, which is, I think, the piece around racial equity, right? Like not coding or hiding language as a way to skirt around people and people's lived experiences. So I appreciate that. And I can say in the process, the feedback was pretty consistent in terms of what students and staff felt was a best reflection.
Judah, did that take care of your question?
It did not. I have a comment. I'm going to come out strongly in favor of language, including gender nonconforming students. When we're enacting policies that are designed to protect students who identify as transgender, we're also protecting all students in their self-exploration and expression. And to say that we are specifically including students whose gender presentation may not conform with societal norms, I think is really important, because when you're looking at the data, that those students are disproportionately targeted because they are believed to be transgender or members of the LGBTQ plus community, even if they aren't. So to say that we are welcoming our students in ways that express their identity to what feels best for them, however they identify, I just think is very, very important. And I would really like to make sure that that's included in our final policy.
Like in the language or the title? Just for clarity for folk working on this.
Sorry, the language as it is when we're having the explicit language in there. I know there's some questions about gender nonconforming. I'm not a student, right? But in my experience with working in the trans community and in education, that's a very common term, and it's just a way that we're making sure to explicitly be inclusive of all forms of expression, regardless of how students identify. I apologize. So I just really want to make sure that that language stays in the policy.
Thanks, Judah. And for when I'm thinking about this policy, both nationally and in our own community, there's like higher rates of violence against trans folk in particular, and we see that even in Corvallis. And so I think like the naming of who we're talking about is really important, and I also want to respect like what the students and the staff want. And so I'm trying to think of like how we can do both, and I don't know if it's just including the terminology and the wording of the policy versus the title. And I do want to point out, I want to make sure that people know, the term that I made sure to tell Melissa about was actually two-spirit, because it's talked about in the policy, but there's no definition, and so that's kind of like a very highly invisibilized and silenced community, even within Corvallis. And the terms that they're using for ODE do not encompass like necessarily a totality. So that'd be something I'd be interested in helping with through my other capacity outside of the board, if you want to help with that. But I just want to say I agree with what's been said about that. And it's a tough one because like it's been presented in a way to students and staff that support students and staff that identify as folk who are covered in the policy. Yeah, so I just wanted to name that I feel like there's a little bit of stuff to think about. That's why I think it might be good just to like, if we wait a little bit longer for a second read on this one.
I would appreciate that. I think I'd like to bring this back to that group to rumble with. There's a lot of people that are excited about these policy changes, so I'd like to talk with them. And they're, like Sabrina said, they're working directly with our students, so.
Yeah, that makes sense. And to make sure that they don't feel silenced by the board either. Like we want to make sure that there's like, it's a complicated conversation in the naming and policies. And I think that's something good for the students to think about too, like as, because what happens sometimes is like there's newer terms and then there's other repercussions sometimes. But is there any other comments on this one before we, okay.
If we're taking this back to the students, could we see if there's ways that, or the group that they have suggestions for us to be better respecting and utilizing neo-pronouns in school policy? Just a thought.
Can you say that one more time, Judah? Not, what kind of pronouns?
Neo-pronouns. So neo-pronouns are, sorry, I was just pulling up the policy there, they're technically like new pronouns, and those are ones that may not be commonly in use, that students or anybody feels best represents their identity. And so a lot of times we see, options only for she, her, he, him, his, and they, them, but that there are students who use pronouns outside of those, just to see if there's ways that we can better support students who feel best represented by neo-pronouns as less common pronouns.
Like Z and Zer and stuff, and those kind of.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Just wanted to make sure community had an example. Go ahead, Sammy.
I have two suggestions or comments. The first one is from good old friend Judy Ball, one of the co-authors, suggesting page 2, change the school should to the school shall, and I agree with it. If it is a must that the school must do it, then we should be consistent in our language where we use shall, S-H-A-L-L. So that's the first comment on page...
student identity and expression, or?
On page 2, yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then the second comment is the new paragraph or new header, gender-based activities and single-sex programs. I'm wondering if the "if" is a typo or if the sentence is not complete, because it makes a huge difference to the meaning for the new sentence. Again, gender-based activities and single-sex programs. The paragraph reads, single-sex programs on a limited basis if they are linked to an important educational objectives of the school, comma, are voluntary, comma, and if, and that's the questionable if, a substantially equal program is available for any excluded students, there should be something after that. Or if we want to strike if, then it would read, and a substantially equal program shall be made available for any excluded students. Is that the intention? So I'm not sure what do we mean by that. And
I'll check the guidance, if that came out of the ODE guidance, so I'll check that.
Okay.
Sarah, did you have any additional, because you wanted this one pulled to? Okay, I have one more question. Have we thought about with this policy asking the students whom it's intended for, like, instead of saying like, what do you think of this policy, taking them the policy and saying like, if there's anything that you would like to see included in here or that you think could be written differently, instead of saying like, what do you think about it? Have we presented to them like,
Not that way, no.
do you want to change this in any way?
Yeah.
Instead of, that might be a good approach too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thinking about policy stuff, but yeah, okay. Okay. And then the one I pulled was the ACAR. I'm wondering, wait, that was it, right, with that one? Yeah, okay. Hold on, let me pull it up. Sorry for people on the, I'm like all over the place with the microphone. Where's the ACAR? Okay, there it is. Okay. For this one, I feel like this is the complaint process, right, for discrimination?
Yes.
I'm wondering for this one in particular if, and just in general with our complaint processes, if there's a reason why it's limited to 10 working days for them to respond with a complaint?
If there's a reason why there are 10 days, I think that's just the OAR or the ORS. It's always been that way, and everything is aligned. That's what we've done with policy work previously, is to ensure that the 10 days are aligned through the different complaint processes that exist.
Is that state statute guided?
I can check.
That'd be, I'd appreciate you checking.
Yeah.
That way it's clear for community, because I think that's one of our biggest pieces of feedback.
Is it takes too long?
No, that they ran out of time.
Oh,
Like they didn't know that they could do a complaint.
Got it, okay.
Or they could appeal something in 10 days goes by super fast.
Okay.
And so I think it would be helpful if we explained why that 10-day exists, so
Okay.
it's more clear. That's all. Does anybody else have anything about that one? Just me? Okay. You know me with policies. Okay, we're done with consolidated information, and we are at board member comments. Anybody have any comments? You raise your hand, Sammy, go ahead. And then Therese.
Yeah, I want to share my apologies to the rest of the board and also to the folks who were sharing their public comments for arriving late. I was in a community event in solidarity with the Jewish community, and I heard from community members their appreciation to Ryan and the district for the statement that was shared. And also, I heard from folks from the Muslim community as well, sharing the same sentiment. So really, thank you for sharing that. There were some also concerns being shared around timing of instruction around the Holocaust and how that could be traumatizing if it was done during these difficult times. So happy to share that with you, Ryan, about the school and et cetera. So just want to share our commitments and our stand that we're standing in solidarity with those who are affected, and my deep appreciation for the district for being very clear in those statements. Some parents and community members shared how different it is from other employers, that we were ahead of it and trying to make sure we are assuring our community members. And I hope that we are continuing to provide counseling services and support for those who ask it. The second reports I want to share, and sorry again for not being there for the brief around OSBA. I'm going to listen to the discussion if there was a discussion around the event yesterday for the regional legislative roadshow. Yesterday was the 10th out of 20, and I'm still on track and hoping to finish them all and visiting them all, and we'll report back. And if there is any feedback on how we can improve those meetings from your experience yesterday, for those who attended it, I would love to take it so we can improve those events. It's been really humbling to hear and see both the diversity and consistency of problems, challenges, and the common needs that our educators and school board members are striving to see in the system, and appreciate you for those who were able to make it, and looking forward to continue advocating.
Oh, yeah, I have two thoughts. The first one, actually, it's lagging, but it's a comment that's just generally came out of the gender expansive student policy conversation. And I guess what I just wanted to draw attention to is that whatever language we land on, I think it's important to remember that when the community reads this, we're going to have people who are reading this policy who are part of this community, and we're also going to have people reading the policy who are vehemently opposed to the rights of this community. And so when we think about language like transgender, what comes to mind for me is that that word is a powerful word. It's a word that we are seeing across our country coming up in conjunction with the loss of rights at the community level, at the state level. And so I would just encourage us to make sure that we aren't missing an opportunity to make a very clear point about who we mean when we are talking about our students, because gender expansive does not necessarily mean very much to people that don't pay attention to this community of people anyway. And so there's power in language, and I just want us to be mindful about if there's something to that. I'm not advocating one way or the other. I do not identify as transgender, and I am not qualified to comment on whether that language needs to be here. But I do recognize that in communities where I do have conversations with folks, if more recognizable language wasn't called out, they may miss the point of it. So it's just a thought. My actual planned board member report was that I wanted to just say how pleased I was to learn that in the middle school health classes that they were visited by ABC House. This past, I think it was early this week or the end of last week, Linus Pauling's health class for 7th grade at least had speakers from ABC House. And if you're not familiar as a community member with what ABC House does, please look them up. They do amazing work, but their work is really foundational in serving individuals who've experienced violence, and particularly sexual violence, particularly children who've experienced that. And so I was just amazed to have my child come home with this wealth of knowledge about this topic that's so important, and that I hadn't really heard or experienced being talked about so clearly. And so it's just a kudos to the district, because one of the most important measures of protection we can give our kids is understanding what this is, so that they can understand when it's happening for them, when they're interacting with others who have experienced sexual violence. I just was floored at how much he understood and how age appropriate his understanding of the information really was. And so a thank you to the district and to the health teachers, and specifically to Mr. Hastings, for making sure that that information is getting to our kids, and please keep doing that.
Judah, you have a comment?
I just want to thank everyone for your accommodation and accessibility, for allowing me to access this meeting. I am looking forward to continued discussion on this policy, and I just want to bring forward to the board to note that Monday, November the 20th, is Transgender Day of Remembrance, where my community remembers all the transgender folks and non-binary folks who were killed because of their identity. And so I just really want to bring forward that what this board is doing in this policy is violence prevention, and is very, very important. And it does absolutely merit the thoughtfulness and thoroughness that is being invested into it. And so thank you to the board.
Thanks, Judah. And Teresa, I wanted to thank you for pointing out the power of language, because when you were talking, I was thinking about the hundreds of anti-trans bills that have been introduced nationally, as well as the ones here locally within Oregon. And I think, like, remembering the power of language, and I would hate for it to seem like we're putting forth a policy that hides part of our community that is under such heavy, like, it's really hard. Just, I don't identify as transgender myself, but I do work with a lot of folk that do, and the impact of just the national trend and local trend is pretty significant. And so I appreciate you pointing that out as a point of violence prevention too, Judah, because policy is really powerful and legislation is as well. And we may be like a smallish town in a smallish state, but I think that it does matter, and especially to our local community members. So yeah, I just wanted to add that in too, because I was sitting heavy with that when you were talking, Therese. I was like, you're right. And that has Sammy into another comment.
Yeah,
One more, Sammy.
I just want to sit with where we are. while we're self-reflecting, I want to also reflect on another dimension. And I'm going to lean on a conversation I had with you, Judah. You shared with me another municipality or a governmental entity that borrowed the policy that the Corvallis School District provided. Also that OSBA doesn't go as far as we go. We give the students autonomy in deciding where the decision-making happens in terms of informing parents, and that sits with the students. And I think that's so core and so important, and I appreciate that, and I hope OSBA goes where we are, because that's what's right. And with that, I want to acknowledge that the vulnerability and attention that Ryan, Melissa, Sabrina, and the rest of the team are putting to get us where we are. So really, I want to celebrate that and really acknowledge what the district is doing while we're self-reflecting that we need to do better.
Thanks, Sammy. Any other board comments? You got one? Yeah, okay.
So I think, was tonight the first night that we've had public comment after we've done some revision of our board working agreement? I think that was the first time that we had heard the language that you shared tonight, Lou, around just public comment that felt a lot more welcoming to that space. And I just wanted to comment on how much I appreciated that and the work that we've done as a board to address that. And also for folks who came tonight. We heard from several different folks about several different topics. And as a board, I think that's so meaningful for us while we're working on our goals and the goals of the district, to really be able to think about what are the things that we're hearing, how do we bring that out through those goals, and even when there are things that come up in terms of operations that we may not be able to address directly, how do we then support those of you who do in those moments where care is needed, where support is needed. So just wanted to share gratitude for all of you and the approach that we're taking to public comment and looking at how we honor that, and also to the community for coming forward with those comments. Okay.
Well, with that, I think this is I haven't shared very many meetings, but this is the first one where I went over, so my bad. But I think it's, we had a lot to say about the board goals, and so thanks for hanging in there. I was set up. It was a setup. And so thank you, staff, for hanging out late, and thank you, tech support, as always. And everybody that has been emailing us, continue to email us if you'd like. Thanks. Okay. Have a good night. I have to adjourn the meeting. Just kidding. Haha.
Yeah. You at least have to say we're adjourned.
I do. It's 9:17, and the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everyone. Hope you have a good night.